Namaste, viewers. Welcome to Jaipur Dialogue USA. And I have great pleasure in welcoming three very prominent Hindu warriors who are part of Coalition of Hindus of North America, led by their founder, Mr. Nikunj Trivedi. I have great pleasure in welcoming Miss Pushpita Prasad. She's also from Bihar like me, but grew up in Delhi, and she calls herself a storyteller and a communication expert. So we will see her storytelling wizardry today in our conversation. And third gentleman is Aldrin Deepak, who is a technology gentleman from Silicon Valley. And Deepak is for the first time on this show today, and I welcome you, Deepak, because you are also a very proud Dalit Hindu activist, part of the National Steering Committee of Kohana. That's welcome to the show, all three of you. Now, the reason we are here today is to talk about two things that happened. One was the Cisco Caste case was removed, was withdrawn. It was reckoned as a battle won, a war won, whatever. And then there was SB 403. So I would leave the opportunity to the storyteller to tell us what is the story behind the whole thing and what is unfolding right now. This is important because there are a lot of Indians who are not even aware of what's going on. And either they are uninvolved, or as I call them, the lotus eaters, or Shatranj ke khiladi. The village is burning, but I have a checkmate, so I'm playing the game. So let's try to kind of awaken and stir up the hornet's nest, so to say, from your side. How has the battle been, and what's the story about it? Pushpita ji.
Sure. Namaste, Vibhuji, and thank you for having us here to discuss this very important topic. Very glad to be back on your show. So, I think you said it exactly right. The Hindu and Indian American community here is a very interesting community. And we have actually seen, so while a small segment of people are now aware of the problem and are fighting it and are fighting it at a rate that, at a response that we have not really seen. I'll get into the story very quickly, but I just want to say that, I live in California where this law is being introduced and debated, and it has been unprecedented. We have seen 4 straight weeks, 4 straight Tuesdays, sorry, of the Hindu and Indian American community coming out in peaceful rallies in person. So I'm not talking about Zoom attendance or webinars and things, but actually showing up in person. 250 people in Fremont outside Senator Wahab's office. Then several people showed up at a town hall. Then several people showed up at couple of local events. And then this past Tuesday, I think close to 400-500 folks showed up in Sacramento when the Judiciary Committee hearing was happening. So I think that's really unprecedented in terms of the turnout and how worried people are, because that's really a reflection of how worried people are. But going back to the story, right? Why are people so worried, and why are some people or so many people still unaware? So, as you said, it all began with the Cisco case almost 3 years ago in June 2020, when the state of California filed a lawsuit against Cisco Systems, but also two individuals who who worked there, basically alleging that they had discriminated against a Dalit person that they supervised. Now, whatever the allegations against those people, at Kona, we had always said that, look, you fundamentally cannot overturn the principles of justice, and whether those individuals are guilty or innocent, their guilt or innocence has nothing to do with the community, right? I mean, every day you go to the courthouse, there are people being sentenced for something or another. No other community seems to have this desire to take on the guilt of an individual who is being sentenced for any crime. But somehow, with the Indian or Hindu community, the standards have been different. And this one unproven Cisco allegation has led to a castle of caste, as I like to call it, being constructed, because this one unproven allegation was used to pass caste as a protected policy resolutions at so many universities, starting with UC Davis, California State University, Harvard, Brown. I'm sure I've missed a few. There's been a lot. And then Santa Clara, the county of Santa Clara, in April 2021, tried to introduce this through the Human Rights Commission at a county level. The community fought back against that, and that was put aside. But as we've it resurfaced in Seattle, and now it's been introduced as as a California bill. So it's really alarming because if this goes into, if this passes, this becomes law in California, the largest state in the US and home to the tech industry. Even though it's a California law, it's effectively going to be a national law, because this is home to major industries. And once they are complying, there is no escape for anybody. So I know we'll get more into the nuances of stuff, but I think for anybody who thinks this is not going to impact them, they really need to spend just half an hour, 1 hour going through the stuff, seeing what happens, because effectively SB 403 is a way for to legally profile, and I use that word with great care, to legally profile a community based on nothing but their birth. And so everybody who is asking, why do you oppose this? I ask them the reverse. Why would you support the legal profiling of a community based on birth? That is a fundamental contravention of every principle of justice.
Thank you. Brilliant opening statement. And I wanted to come to Aldrin. And Aldrin, I wanted to ask you, from my knowledge as well as understanding of the people, because everybody assumes that this particular caste thing is against everybody else other than Dalits and all. And you are a Dalit activist, you're part of Kona, and I'm delighted and honored to speak with you. I'm not being facetious about it. I wanted to ask you, what's your experience about the whole thing? What do you find that the enemies of, or the people who are propagating the caste thing, what are they trying to do to communities about whom they claim to be supporting? Your thoughts on that?
Namaste, Vibhuti. Thank you so much for having us. It's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you.
So that's a very good question, right? So especially in the United States, where people come from all over the world with many different backgrounds and many different history, and suddenly this has become a subject of interest to certain people who have no claim in this society, who have no interaction in this society. They basically want to somehow control the narrative that a particular society wants to have of their own. Now, like what Pushpitaji was talking about, the Cisco case, this is why I got involved. Like, I was like happy-go-lucky Indian who never was ever asked what caste is that I come from. I every time that I get a chance, I would invite my Indian friends to have a party or have a puja puraskaras in my house. Nobody ever asked me for what caste I was, or the only question that would come in, which part of India you come from, because we want to make sure what you eat. I like your dosa, and then I like your matar paneer, whatever. But it was never been a question about what caste is. And then suddenly I started reading about the Cisco case, and that's when I realized the people that are sitting and trying to shepherd us have no clue about what our community is. The way that they described what a Dalit should be, a dark skinned, oppressed, uneducated person in India, is far from the truth. Right. In my own family, you can find the whole spectrum of colors of people with educational background. And the whole point that they were trying to make was lost on me. Like, and this Cisco case was used as a dog whistle to rally up their crowd without even waiting for the judgment on what happened. And we know what happened now. Now suddenly this is being used to rally the people to say, to show the boogeyman and say, look, this is what is going to happen. That's why we need this. And this is where we are today. And the reason is because our society is very calm, and we contribute to the places that we are in. We want to be part of the society, not to be seen outside the society. We want to integrate ourselves, and this is why that they've used that as a weakness. And now suddenly they want to tell us who we are, what we do, and what our problems are. Now the silliest part for me is like if you take a certain people, the priests who molested children, and you take the entire priesthood and say, before you go to the priest, before you go to children, you need to be tested to make sure that you're not going to be the child molester. This is absurd thing that they do. The population of Indians are less than 1% in America, and the Dalit population within that is insignificant because we don't know how many, because nobody comes around and walks around and say, I'm a Dalit, you're that, I'm that, right? Because once you're here, we are here. And this is what is causing the problem, because these people who want to make law for us have no idea who we are and how we live, and they constantly tell us who we are and what we're going to be. And this has been my, but the anger that I have is because of this. Not because discrimination is a horrible thing. We all should condemn. We all should support. When somebody is discriminated, we should support and make sure that the justice is done. But these people are judge, jury, advocate, and have no claim in the society that they're trying to sort of mitigate who is going to be who and what they can be, how they can live in their life in this country. And this is why I have a problem.
Thank you very much. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. As very important thing that you said was, these people are driving the narrative. The opponents are driving the narrative. And I'll piggyback on that and ask Nirkunj about this. You have been in the forefront, and congratulations for establishing Kona the way you have done. And you have done a phenomenal progress and organized it very well. So congratulations. Very proud of you, Nikunj. Come tell me that, what Deepak was talking about, is that how is it that people who are totally disconnected or don't know anything about it, how have they succeeded in creating the narrative as if it is the worst thing that can happen? And what really irked me and made my curiosity really go up was, here was a first-time California senator who is of Afghan origin, if reports are to be believed. And the first thing she talks about is caste, which has no relevance in the US context at all. And based on a Equality Lab report, which we know that is based on false data. And we have not taken advantage of the Carnegie Foundation report, which said that there is no caste-based discrimination in America. And I echo Deepak's word here. Nobody has asked any Indian what caste you belong to. You come and do things. You are a Tamilian, Bihari, or whatever. Nobody asks anybody's caste, and every Indian has succeeded here, regardless of who he is. Nobody asks anybody. So tell us the story from that perspective for people to understand who has stolen this narrative and who is making the narrative. You and I struggle to raise money for our cause, but they get money from all over the world. Tell us something about that.
Yeah, so thank you, first of all, for having us here. I think it's really important conversation, and there are multiple pieces here. Number one is, as you mentioned, who's behind this, right? And so Equality Lab, since 2018, their survey, when it was launched, they've had a calculated strategy to get to the point where they're getting to, right? Their eventual goal is to have a federal law that outlaws caste discrimination and potentially have quotas on the visa side of, like, so for example, in H-1B, they would like to see if they can actually put like, okay, X amount of quote unquote Dalits should be getting visas versus all the other people. So there's a whole plan that they have in place. And I don't say this lightly, because we have information and data to back this up, number one. So there's been, since 2018 to 2023, 5 years and counting, they have been continuously working on this, number one. Number two, they are supported by a global nexus, essentially, of a certain Marxist activists, and equality that falls within that parameter, Islamists as well as Khalistanis, who have aligned on this platform, that they exist in academia. So if you look at the first 2018 Equality Lab survey, it has a litany of US-based academics who blindly support targeted hate against Hinduism, okay? And if you look at that report, it very clearly shows Hindu imagery. It talks about how caste has roots in Hindu scriptures. most Hindus discriminate based on this. They even have different names used. They have a whole chart that says how do you identify someone's caste. All this stuff in that report that has been used extensively across the board, whether it's in the Cisco case. Now, I'll talk about Cisco case in a second, whether it's attacking the BAPS Swaminarayan temple, whether it's all the policies that have been passed in the US in universities. And by the way, Columbia becoming the next one, most recent one to pass this as well. So in our neck of the woods in that sense. So you have universities from Cal State to Harvard and Columbia passing this based on information and training provided by Equality Labs and their cohorts, essentially, right? So that's the first thing people need to understand, that this is a dangerous hate group that has continued to attack Hindu festivals, continued to attack Hindu organizations, continued to attack Hinduism in general. They have cleaned up a lot of their websites and their social media because they've been facing a lot of backlash from well-meaning Hindus who are not involved in anything, all of a sudden, like you or someone who just basically says, hey, what the heck is all this stuff, right? That's number one. Now let's talk about the Cisco case and what really ended up happening there, right? So it's important for us to understand that the case against Cisco continues. The case against the two engineers has been dismissed. And that's really important because Cisco can do what it wants, but the two Indian engineers were basically dismissed from this case. Important to keep in mind that for those people who say that, oh, this is not going to affect me, or why should I be worried about it? I don't discriminate in caste. Well, let me tell you something. Sundar Iyer is an atheist. Okay, he's a secular atheist, basically, maybe because his last name is Iyer, so he's like a kind of a culturally Hindu per se, but he's really an atheist, and he has declared that. Even an atheist who has promoted the Dalit person, he had given him all the top jobs, he had given him incentive compensation, et cetera, even that person got sued. So who are we in that sense? Someone who is atheist gets sued. And now how did that person get sued? What's really interesting is this is the state abuse of power that we all need to be careful about. The state of California assigned caste to this guy based on presumption of guilt, and said that we believe, based on information and belief, our information and belief, that you are a Brahmin, and therefore you have a caste, and therefore you are casteist. Even though the guy says, I'm an atheist. Remember this. So now this is a fundamental violation of civil rights, because now you're assigning religion to an atheist person. And this is the scary part of this whole game here. Because tomorrow, the civil rights department, the same civil rights department in California, can come after any Indian business, any Indian person, any Indian manager, et cetera, and say, we believe you're upper caste, and therefore you are going to be assigned a caste, and we're going to prosecute you on this. So this point is really, really important for our community to understand. I cannot emphasize this enough. The state abuse of power, the power that a state has to go after us as a community. So I'll stop here and we'll continue.
That's very scary, like what you said, that the state authority, like state is saying that this is your caste. How can they do that? Aldrin, I'm coming to you with that thought process that, it looks like the entire picture being painted is fudge the entire data, fudge the entire information, and, create a khichdi of a kind which is totally tasteless. And, nobody can figure out what proportion of rice, dal, and other items are in it. I don't want to trivialize the situation by giving the khichdi analogy, but what I want to say is, I want to ask you this is, that obviously people who are taking this particular storyline, they are using the Dalits as a tool. They are firing their guns using your shoulder, Dalit's shoulder, to fire at everybody else. So tell us about it. How are you feeling about it, other than your anger about Cisco thing? How, as a community, you want to say, get the gun off my shoulder?
Yes, that's basically how the game is played on that side, right? Because this is the parade of the oppression and the oppressors, right? So this is their newest and modified version of what they've been doing for the last 40 years, the leftists, I mean. So they needed somebody to attack that can benefit them when like what Nikunji was saying, when you look at the actors, their background, you know exactly what they're thinking. We systematically have been to these hearings and these meetings. All of these people that are so worried about the Dalits cannot find Dalits to come and speak about the heinous crimes that has been perpetrated on them. It's always the leftists who come and sit there and say, "Oh, these I come from this and I did this and that's why I want this." And you go, where are they? Aren't you oppressing again when you're saying that I did that, but they cannot come and speak? Don't you think that you should give them a voice to speak about what is going on in America? Why haven't you have all of these pseudo statistics? Why haven't you shown a proof of your statistics? Once we went to this university hearing, they had 30 or so members. One Dalit was not even from India. That we are 1.4 billion people. They could not find one Dalit that migrated to America from India who has been oppressed to come and speak about it. We had Bahujanas, we have Dalits in our panel. We were not given chance to talk. Now, this is what is my problem that I have with them. When you're saying that you're speaking for me, can you hear what I have to say? Or is it because you think that within your colonial mind that I am not capable of expressing myself? I'm not capable of understanding what my life is, day-to-day life as a Dalit? For the 35 years that I've lived in America, I never once had to say I'm a Dalit. Cisco case and these people that are pushing this agenda made me come out and say I'm a Dalit, useless proclamation that I never had to make in my life. It's nonsense. And the only people that are benefiting from this are the people who are sitting in high places and claiming themselves to be holier than thou and going places in whatever the career that they're choosing to have a tenure in a college or have a political career. I want them to show me one Dalit that they have helped in America. Just one. One of them, with all the money that they have, with all the policies that have been writing, with all the statistics that have been writing for the last 10 years, I want them to bring one proof to show this is what we have done for this person. Then we can sit down and say, "Oh, I see where you're going. Maybe we can have a conversation." You can't even do that with these, shadow puppets that you're bringing in and showing, "Look, this is what is happening." Look, you will never be my shepherd. I'm very free. I don't need somebody to tell me who I am, what I need. The country that I live in gives me enough privileges and rights to go and fight my own battle. You not knowing anything about my culture and my tradition, and they attack my culture and my tradition. They tell me that me celebrating my festival is somehow degrading myself. Like now you're going to tell me what I need to leave my religion now because you think that I don't belong there. The sages, the saints that come from my community, you're telling don't belong to that community, that tradition. Who the hell are you? This is the question I want to ask them. Like, if you do not understand anything about India and Hinduism and the tradition that we have in there, you cannot use that against us. Learn a little bit about it, then we will talk about it. This is why I categorically deny their interference in our society, especially in America, where you have nothing to do with it. I go to temple, I worship just like everybody else. I collect the aradhana samagris myself. Nobody ever come and says, "Wait a minute, don't touch those things. It's you're untouchable." Don't. Nobody ever says that. I've gone to every places that any Indian will go. Nobody ever say, "Wait a minute, do you have a card that shows that you're from Africa?" This kind of nonsense is what they're pushing, and their agenda is their own. I don't know what it is, but if we don't stand up and say, "Wait a minute, we have the stake in this. You're not a stakeholder. We're the stakeholder. Let's come up with our own solution. We don't need you. If we need you, we'll come for legislation to you." Not you don't come to us, we'll come to you. That's what you are there for. You have to hear. Now, when I come to you, you reject me. You say, oh, not everybody's experience is the same as yours, but you're doing the same thing. You're using an anecdote of somewhere that may not exist and say everybody is like this. This is the problem that we're having. And if Indians don't wake up and see this, we'll be in trouble.
That's an excellent closing to your statement that if Indians don't wake up, we are going to be harassed. And to that end, I wanted to share with you a tweet from a very famous California resident, Silicon Valley professional, entrepreneur, remarkably well known name. And I have no hesitation in mentioning because her name is Asha Jadeja Motwani, and she tweeted it. It's a public tweet. And she says, it's 1,000 versus 2. First-gen Indian American immigrants in tech have literally no one to protect their ass. Wildly successful, high net worth, tech nerdy, and family oriented, they are sitting ducks for hate groups like Equality Labs, which has a network of over 1,000. We might have 2 people that we stumbled upon because they told us about a smear campaign. At first, we didn't believe the 2. Very important point that ourselves did not believe in the 2. Thank heavens, they are waking us all up. It's still 1,000 versus 2. The hate group and its roots are 30 years old. We techies woke up last week. There is no way we can catch up. About the smear campaign, ignore them and let American courts deal with cases as they arise if they ever do. My guess, nothing will happen. Go enjoy your weekend. And that's the point which I'm trying to piggyback on Aldrin's closure, that we have to become aware. Is this approach of Asha Jadeja Motwani, I'm not complaining. I'm saying this is an observation of a very successful techie. Is that okay? Go have a good weekend. It's like after 9/11, Bush said, go do shopping. That's the point which is very, very, and we know exactly where the unholy alliance is working here now. Shopping is no longer the pleasure that it was once. So share with us, Pushpitaji, your narrative and your storytelling. Can we afford to do what we are being told? Oh, don't worry, be happy.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very dangerous time, and our apathy is going to be it's going to be our end game if we don't wake up. I think people, we all have a belief in the power of lawsuits in America, and certainly they are important, but I think we completely underestimate the power of a law. And very few laws get challenged. Everyone is Sundar Iyer and Kumpala just got out. They were the cases were withdrawn against them. That is great. So in a sense, you can say that the right thing was done. But I think people don't understand that those two were not not representative of the average Indian. Like Nikunji said, right? Sundar Iyer had done a lot of things that most people haven't. He's a declared atheist, and he had written that in a blog that he had published in Stanford Days 20 years before. He was a citizen. He is a citizen, sorry, and established in his career by the time all of this happened. I asked the folks, we said who will be the next Sundar Iyer, but the next Sundar Iyer could be, a person who is, now that Indians are having to spend 20, 30 years in limbo on immigrant visas, it could be a person who's not yet been able to get his or her green card citizenship. It could be a person who's not very senior in their position, could be an engineering manager, project manager, product manager, whatever. Do you think those people will have the wherewithal to fight back, to put up the fight that these two did? And do remember, when these two fought back, this was not a law. So they were the first ones fighting sort of in new territory. But if a new thing happens, there's now so much precedent. There would be a law that they are up against. So many companies, so many tech companies have added caste as a protected category to their policy. So the danger is already upon us. It's not something in the future, it's already amid us. And this whole thing of let's just ignore it. Let's look at the role of who is going to be the judge, jury, and executioner in this setup, right? Now that caste is a protected category in many, many major tech companies. It again back to the equality labs and the folks that they have trained out there. They are effectively a hate group. If you look at what they have said about Hinduism over and over again publicly in their tweets, in their articles, in their videos, in their webinars, it's to me one of the most dangerous and scary part of this whole movement has been how easy it has been for a hate group to get platform. We've talked about faulty data, that is certainly one thing. But what has boggled my mind is that a state so committed to diversity and openness as California has just looked the other way. Any number of journalists and media have looked the other way because we have sent them all this information, but they will not carry it. The fact that somebody is calling Holi a festival. So, and what do they say? I think we always talk in euphemism. So I want to take 2 minutes to just reiterate what is it that they actually say. They say Holi is a violent, oppressive festival that celebrates the burning of a Bahujan female. So Holika has gone from being a princess and the brother of a tyrannical emperor who is trying to kill her underage nephew. This woman is being presented as a Bahujan heroine whose killing needs to be mourned. This is the kind of subversion, but these folks are now going to be your experts. So if anybody faces a caste discrimination complaint, who's going to educate? Your company's HR or DEI or somebody like that. The DEI and all of these folks are heavily, heavily coming trained from the Equality Labs set of folks. So if you go there expecting justice, you're in for a rude surprise. And like I said earlier, very, very few people will have the wherewithal to put up the legal fight that Sundar Iyer and N. Kompella did. So I think the community should be the exact opposite of go celebrate. They should actually go spend their weekend understanding this issue very deeply, studying it very deeply, and then start raising the alarm. Call your senators, turn out, talk to your lawmakers, because this is really subversion at one of the most fundamental level. The other thing that Aldrin was talking about, and I just want to take a minute to build on it, is there is a fundamental attempt here to reshape how Hindu Dharma is practiced itself, because it's always been a very self-directed, very diverse faith where a lot of different practices, deities, conflicting traditions are accommodated under an umbrella, right? And that has been the beauty. You can be a Shakta, you can be a Vaishnav, you can be a Shakta who is very heavily into certain practices, you can be a Vaishnav who does very different practices as a pure vegetarian, etc. But now you have a set of Ivy League academics and very privileged activists who are going to be defining what it means to be Hindu, what it means to be a certain caste, up who's upper, who's lower. So again, you are giving a lot of power to people who you have no idea who they are. We know who's training them and why, but the Joshmo Indian and the Joshmo American who will go to these folks has no idea who is acting as judge, jury, and executioner. It's never a good idea for one person to act as judge, jury, executioner, no matter how objective they may be. But when you realize who is training the judge, jury, and executioner, there is absolutely no room for complacency. In fact, it should be the opposite.
Thank you. A very stern warning you gave to everybody, and that was needed. Coming back to the same, piggybacking on what Pushpitaji said just now, Nikunja, I'm coming to you. Narrative, my favorite word. I mean, I have fought this narrative battle ever since 1991 when I was talking about the liberalization program in India and invest in India, because I had to fight the India narrative. And I realized then that if we don't define ourselves, others define us. And that's precisely what Pushpitaji mentioned just now, that the people have hijacked and they made us a goat, and everybody is shooting from their own angles. How are you, Nikunj, in their fight to build the narrative, establish the organization called Kona? How is your experience so far in the few years that you have been fighting it out, trying to rewrite the narrative, rebuild the strategy, and reestablish the glory of what we are?
Yeah, no, I mean, the narrative is a very important word, and most people don't understand even, I mean, I'm sorry to say, but they don't know what that really means. Okay.
You are right.
Even in plain English.
When I talked about narrative the first time, people laughed at me. What do you mean narrative? we have a great narrative. They did not understand it. I totally concur. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you.
So
Please go
no,
ahead.
exactly. I just wanted to kind of be just basically funny about that. Anyway,
Yeah.
so people don't understand that, but what's really, I think what we have to understand is we have never been that good at narrative building over the years, right? Through colonization and other things. The problem we face now, and I give this analogy that you imagine it's like that movie Rocky. I like the movie Rocky, and Rocky was supposed to fight with that boxer Drago, right? Essentially, big Russian boxer, etc. And he had to train. The problem with us is that we are a bunch of people who have never exercised, proverbially, right? We have never ran on a treadmill. We have never lifted weights, and we want to go fight a 300-pound boxer and win tomorrow morning. Okay, so we want to go into the ring. We want to win tomorrow morning and say, and then when we take a beating, we'd say, oh my God, we can't do this, because this is just not going to happen. I think this is a battle lost. Buddy, you haven't even trained yourself. So the point is, 3 years ago, we realized that we need to train ourselves like Rocky Balboa. We need to get to the point where we are comfortable enough to enter the ring and have some heavy punches. We're going to lose. We're going to lose a lot, because the only way to win is to lose a lot. Win, understand what the strategies are, equip yourself with the right resources. Number one. Number two is we have been building resources over the past 3 years. It's a slow process. I can tell you, I work full-time in banking, and I do this also as well. So the other side doesn't have that constraint. They have full-time activists who get paid very well, who have millions of dollars of budgets going at this, supported by institutions like universities, right? So we are up against the 300-pound boxer, and we need to bulk up very fast. If we don't do that, we're not going to win this narrative, because they're running literally like 100 miles an hour, and we are basically on a bicycle, pedaling away. We need to get on that, Corvette or Chevy or whatever you want to call it, Lamborghini, whichever you want to say, very fast. And to do that, we need the support of the community, financial support. I'm not going to beat around the bush. You need to fund organizations that are at the forefront of this, because if you don't do that, there is really no hope. Essentially, you have to understand that individuals cannot make a difference like the way institutions can. You see that across the board. Equality Labs, literally a one-woman show that started off, has a few groups and activists and things like that. A shady organization that doesn't even have its own tax ID. It's covered under a project of Fractured Atlas, which is a entity based out of New York. Okay, so here you are, an organization that is kind of this shady organization, but in the back end, they have a lot of support, and they have been at the forefront of these policies and laws and stuff like that. So narrative building only can happen if you are going to have the resources, the people who are dedicated to it. You have to be almost, sort of single-minded focus on this. Nothing else matters. So, yes, we should enjoy our lives. And I think people do realize that it's got to be healthy balance, but also spend some time understanding, researching, because it's not about just us. It's collectively. If you were sued tomorrow, you're not going to have the resources that Sundar Iyer, Romana Campella may have had, or others may have had. So it's about the common man, common woman, number one. Number two is it's also about our children, because whatever dynamics you think go on in India, forget about all that stuff. These kids are Americans who have been born and raised here. They barely know about their culture and traditions. Forget about caste, forget about anything else. They can barely do things about their own culture. Now, they are going to be subjected to a law just based on their last names, based on some dietary habits that they have. All the while, the same dietary habits can be, a white American can be a vegan and a vegetarian and be spiritual, will never be considered casteist, but all of a sudden a brown Hindu who is basically a vegetarian, does pujas and this and that, is all of a sudden presumed guilty and considered casteist. This is the problem that we are looking at. And this is where the violation of our civil rights and literally state abuse of power can come down heavy on you. You could either be kicked out of America if you're on H-1B visa. There's going to be no further discussion. Your employer doesn't want to deal with you. Okay. And if you are not a H-1B person, if you're just a regular citizen, you're going to go through a heck of a legal battle to prove yourself innocent. And remember, Sundar Iyer fought for 3 years, and 50,000 articles are out there about him, that he's a casteist discriminator. No matter what he can do, the narrative has already been set against that. And every place, from like 6th grade textbooks all the way to Harvard Law School newspaper, Harvard Law School policy papers have written Cisco in there.
Unbelievable that we are being attacked so much. So before I come to Aldrin with my next inquiry, I wanted to just request the viewers, please like, subscribe, share our channel, and support us. As Nikunj very rightly said, unless and until there is money where the mouth is, things don't happen. So support us, support Corner. They need support because otherwise things don't happen. And it is very, very important. Aldrin, I'll come to you on this subject matter. This is a very significant thing when Nikunj mentioned that Sundar Iyer Cisco Caste is part of the college curriculum. Now, have you come across, and I do know, I will make it very clear that I've definitely come across college campuses where our children go through education on Hindu studies, which are way, way, way offline, off the course. And we are made to feel as if we are some kind of a monster, worshipping gods or living our way of life. And what bothers me, Aldrin, is that we are the most peace-loving immigrant community anywhere in the world. Apart from all the numbers of highest median income, we don't have a clout. We are not lawbreakers, but yet we are on the target. It reminds me of the school days when you pick on a kid to just bully him. Are we becoming such a bullying target? And what do we do about it? How do we frame that entire reference, given our elevated status of high income earner professionals and whatever blah blah that goes on? So people like us, but they also wonder because of these narratives built that we are some kind of weirdos. How do we fight that, Aldrin?
Yeah, that's a good question. First thing, whoever is tuned in, great. You're doing a good job. You're educating yourself, and so the shows such as this, any others, just educates you on yourself and in your tradition and your history and ancestry. That's a very important thing. Second thing, support grassroots organizations like Kona. We definitely see. This is the thing. They are attacking. No bully will go and attack somebody who doesn't have money, right? The bully attacks. You only take the money from the lunch money from the guy who has the lunch money. If you don't have it, he will just kick you around and that's it. Now you have the lunch money. You can either give it to the bully or you can give it to people who support you, who want to stand up for you, who fight for your rights. Give it to them so they can do the job for you and give you a place in society. Otherwise, you will be running to people who have no stake in your society, and you will be always the coolies of those people. I say this all the time. This is my favorite saying from a Turkish proverb. It says, the shepherd always scares the sheep with the wolf. He keeps saying, look, the wolf is going to come and get you. Wolf is going to come and get you. Come in my shelter. I'll give you shelter, food and water. And the ecosystem of wolf, he gets 1 or 2 out of 100. You know who gets the greedy person who gets all the sheep? The shepherd. Waiting for you to be so scared of your own people that you see in your people there are wolves. Come to me. I will support you. I will protect you from those wolves. But they eat all of you. They will fatten you up so that they can eat a better meal. That's exactly what they do. You are a better meat for them as long as you think your own people are against you. They're not. This is put in your mind with your colonial mentality. You were taught like that. You're taught like you cannot fight for yourself. You're taught like you're some kind of a victim that cannot be. You see, the thing for me is it's a very important thing, not only academically that these conversations happen, it also human beings, the person-to-person relationship, this kind of conversation should happen. My son, I adopted a child from America. He brought me his 7th grade textbook. They talk so much about British Raj, talk about Mughal Raj, and they talk about caste system, and nothing else about India. And I had to go to the middle school and said, this is wrong. You cannot do that to a particular society. You don't do that to anybody else. You don't talk about the slavery of the Arabs, or you don't talk about the horrible, heinous things that are done on the indigenous people of different countries except America. Why not? Why don't you teach that? Why don't you say the Western, the horrible, the insidious, devastating losses that you have created in the world that we are a part of today? That we are coming here and talking to you about stop abusing us over and over and over. This narrative can only stop when all of us stand up together and say enough is enough. We came to this country on our own merits, and on our own strength. Nobody gave us free lunch. We're not expecting a free lunch. I don't want you to be my shepherd. I'm a free person. I will always be a free person. You don't get to decide for me. And these are the things that we have to make sure that we do. As long as we think that somehow our people are our own enemy, and then you run to these people, somehow you think that somehow you internalize so much hatred because you don't know anything about your own traditions and culture, that you have become an enemy to yourself. And that needs to change. That definitely, you don't have to say that we're the saints, but you don't have to say that we're the worst creatures of all the others. It's in front of you. There are evidence in front of you, day-to-day basis. It happens in your own backyard here in America. Why aren't you questioning that? I can tell you, 80% of the kids in foster family go homeless, right? We can make a dent there by doing something about this, spending all of this money. There are $300,000 given to whoever is going to oversee this discrimination, supposed discrimination that's going to happen to Dalits. That's the verdict from Seattle. $300,000. You know how many homeless people that you can feed in a year in that $300,000? Give it to them. I, as a Dalit, I'm telling you, I want my fellow Americans, to have a better place to live, to have a better place to sleep. I want that. Give it to them. You're not doing it to me. Don't do it in my name. Don't use me, like you said, Vibhuti. Don't use my shoulder to fire on somebody else that you have no business about. Now, when it comes to how they divide us, they don't know anything about our traditions. This woman once had a audacity to say that these people did that to you. And I quoted a shloka from Vishnu Sahasranama and said, Ved Vyas was the son of a fisherwoman and a Brahmin. And people don't reject him and say, oh my God, we cannot have him. He's seen as the most ultimate guru of us. What do you know about us? You don't know about our tradition, our culture. You don't get to question us. And as long as we keep on allowing them to do this to us, they'll keep on doing that. We need to put a full stop and say, support your people to bring your traditions, your way of life to the forefront. Not somebody else telling you what Diwali is, what Holi is. You tell them. That's why I have in my house every year the biggest Diwali puja. I invite 50 people from all different backgrounds. I do the whole Shodashopachara puja, and I make sure that they come and sit and watch it and understand. If they have questions, I'm more than happy to. I want you to come to me if you want to know about what Dalit is. They won't allow any other people, right, to have somebody else's opinions said about them. Right? Any other tradition or religion. They won't. But only it's the Hindus that they can divide and rule on. Nobody is complaining about the two other factions that people fight about all the time. It's always about the Hindus. You can do that. Oh, you're persecuted. No. Let's tell you our story. We are here. We're not dumb or mute or deaf or mute. And the other thing that I say is, just by going through these things for the last 30 years living in America, every foreigner is taught in school about the caste system, so they know about the caste system. Every person who goes and travels to India knows there is caste system. You know how many times a foreigner sat in front of me? I travel all over the world. How many people sit in front of me and say, oh, there's a caste system in India? I'm sitting right in front of you. Do you know who I am? How do you know that there's a caste system in India? Did you go and ask the guy who's been yelled at Oh, are you a Dalit? Is that what is happening in India? Are you being treated badly? No, they don't know anything about it. If you bring 10 Indians in front of you, nobody will know the difference between one and the other. But all of these people already, they're the expert on how India works and how the caste system works. This is what you're going to get time and again, and your children are going to suffer because of that. Because now your children have to know what their jati and caste is, not jati, caste is. They have to, because they will be taught. This will percolate into your education system, and your next generation. If you don't teach in your house and in your temple, they will teach you who you are. They will teach you how horrible your four-handed gods are and your weapon wielding gods are. This is what is going to happen. So if you has a wonderful part on like educating young children. So these are the things that you have to look forward to. If you don't support our grassroots organization, it doesn't matter. I say Kona because I've seen what they do. Go and become a part of something, because if you don't stand for something, you will fall for everything, and that's how it's going to work.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very, very sound suggestion and plan of action. And I will come back to Pushpita ji, the storyteller. What story now? Because I know one thing for sure. I was told by my American boss in India, if you don't tell me what you do, how the hell will I ever know about it? And that's what Aldrin was referring to. So what is the, I mean, at the moment we are all involved at various stages. And as Nikun said, we are tiny tots in this entire battle right now. We are not even equipped. We don't even have the muscle. So the question is, but we have an advantage of technology. Technology allows us to have this conversation today, which we would not have been able to have 10 years ago. So can technology allow, as all of you are in technology arena, other than Nikunj and myself,
Yeah.
but we both of you are technology arena. How can this technology help us to build our narrative and spread it with a multiplier effect? I will bring in the economics study that I did. Multiplier effect. We can create much more multiplier effects around with our narrative. And we have social media tools available. Can we catch up? Pushpita ji.
So I would just take a slightly different track and say that,
Sure.
the most important thing, technology is a great enabler, and definitely has a very important role to play. But nothing substitutes good old fashioned human interaction, standing up and speaking for yourself. Um, you know, uh, we went to an event last week, and Nikon said you can either be, right now Hindus are on the menu. They're looking very delicious, and do we want to be sitting there on the menu looking very appetizing for people, or do we want to get up and get off the menu and have a seat at the table? And that is, I think, what Aldrinji was saying as well, that it's about getting organized and making sure that you are taking the narrative as much as you can. There's obviously limits you can do to an individual, but there is also power in the individual. And I would also say that you need to start at the basics. We talked a little bit about our kids, and I want to bring the conversation back to them, because the amount of misinformation about their own roots that you find among our own children is mind boggling. I'm going to step away from caste and just give you a small example about Holi. So, beautiful, joyous festival, very widely celebrated now among second generation Indians. It's, massive Holi festivals all around the country. However, in February or March, we put up a little online quiz about Holi, and the idea was not to be difficult, or, and ask that people go read a lot of scriptures to get an understanding of Holi. It was really basic stuff. And half the answers were like all the above. Even then, the response rate on that was 65%. That is the level of ignorance we have reached in our community. So I think our community, all of us included, have done a pretty poor job of passing on our traditions, our stories, our knowledge to the next generation, which is what allows a expert, quote unquote, to come in and make claims and say that, Diwali is like Columbus Day for indigenous people, or Holi is celebrating the oppression of a, Bahujan woman, because we have never prioritized, or most of us have not prioritized telling these and elevating the importance of these traditions and stories. So activism and getting involved is everything from making sure your own child understands where you're coming from. We have counseled so many young children, teenagers, high schoolers, college kids, who come and tell us over and over again they were traumatized when the first time they heard about caste was in sixth grade or seventh grade, when it becomes part of the Hinduism lesson, as Aldrinji was talking. Don't let that happen to your child. This is a virus going around. This activism in the guise of caste is a virus going around, and you need to make sure you inoculate your kids before. So that activism can be something as simple as that, but activism can be everything to speaking up in your workplace. Don't sit silent when you have a HR training going on about, and they bring up the pyramid or the caste. When you sit in a room of 50, 60, 100 other people, and even in your mind you're like, that's wrong, but oh, I'm not going to rock the boat, I'm just going to like nod along. You have reinforced the fake narrative that the other 100 people in the room heard, because they hear it from an expert, right? The teacher or the trainer or whoever is sitting there, they have the position of the expert. They're providing some materials. You're sitting in there as an Indian origin or a Hindu person and just keeping quiet or nodding along. That creates confirmation bias for all the other 100 people. So I think you owe it to just making those small protests, if nothing else. And then, of course, become part of an organization, sign up, because you owe it for your kids. And I always say that we have been very lucky. We have come from a very nurturing ecosystem that has given each of us a lot of freedom and power to go out and excel the way we have excelled. But everything good needs protecting. And I think we cannot become lazy and say that, we are not going to do what our ancestors did and just like, figure it out for yourself. No, you have a duty to nurture that tradition and pass it on so that your kids, your grandkids, the further generations have the same advantages that you did. Everything good needs fighting for.
Everything good needs fighting for, and we Indians are not used to fighting. I mean, we have become so self-seeking peace lovers that we forgot that our text talks about dharma yuddha. It's time for us to get into the battlefront, but you have to be ready to do that. You don't just get up from bed and start going for Olympics, or you go to NBA finals. You don't just do that. You have to be. But here is an important point, as we were talking about Mrs. Motawani's tweet, that our enemies have been busy for 30 years, if not more. What took us so long to awaken? This is what bothers me. That don't we see this happening? How did we close our eyes? So going forward, in the last 3 minutes that I have, I want to ask the same question to all of you. Why do you think that the CEOs, so many Indian CEOs who are there in positions, technology guys from Silicon Valley, other places, I said in my tweet that this particular SB 403 is a slap on all the techies around the world, all of us, including me, even if I'm not non-techie. To all Hindus and Indians, it's a slap on our face. It's a slap on our face because they beat us in our own arena. So the question arises, how come none of the CEOs has even said a word about it? I have been in a leadership position. If I were confronted with this scenario, I would have said one statement alone. That's it. That I am who I am because of what I did, my performance, my merit. I did not have caste privilege, nor did I have a caste-based advantage. I'm there because of my merit. Can they not make the statement like that? What prevents them from making that statement, particularly when I know? But a university professor told me that to teach DEI initiatives, they are paying $50,000 an hour to corporate training, to psychologists and others, to train people in DEI and other woke philosophies. Your thought, all three of you have 30 seconds to say, why is it that we have no support from the CEOs of Indian origins? Nikunj, you go first.
You won't, because until they get sued, they won't say anything. They have, essentially because they're running the corporation. So don't expect any support overtly from CEOs. Having said that, I think what can happen is entrepreneurs who are on their own. They have their own businesses. They're not their own bosses. I think can really say that. And Silicon Valley has a lot of those billionaires. Ashaji, you mentioned, she has become very vocal, over the
Yes.
past few years about this issue. And I'm really happy to see someone like her using her stature and her experience and her power of wealth to really stand behind all this stuff. So I'm really happy to see that at least one person coming out. But it won't happen until they get sued, right? The CEOs won't do it yet.
Pushpitaji, what must happen to motivate the CEOs? In addition, what do we do? Where do we go from here?
I would again echo Nikund and say, let's not wait for any knight on a white charger, whether it's X, Y, or Z. This is everybody's fight. Why are they not responding? Probably because it's always the little guy that faces the brunt first. And that if you look at through history, it's the little guy and the middle persons who face the brunt. The top is generally protected till the very last end. So maybe it's not a priority for them yet, but it's certainly, like I mentioned earlier in my argument, that a Sundar Iyer had the wherewithal to fight back, but a middle manager who gets sued is not going to have the wherewithal to fight back. So this is sort of an existential crisis for everybody, for everybody as a community. And I think this needs to become a community fight. Otherwise, you won't have a community left.
Thank you, Pushpitaji. Aldrin, you have the last word.
See, when Dharma ruled, Yatho Raja Tatho Praja was the main thing. But in democracy, Yatho Praja Tatho Raja. So if the common man does not stand up and say, you don't dare shackle me for the person that I am, we're not going to change. So I think until the common man stand up and say, we will not have it, we cannot change the top. That's how it works in democracy. We elect our representatives. So these representatives should be told that you don't get to walk around and do whatever and say whatever you want to. So I would say, I think every man, every woman, every child who is of Indian descent, who is a Hindu, who relate themselves to somewhere in India and Indian culture, should stand up and say, this is not who we are. You don't get to define us. We have our own definition, and we'll tell you what it is.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I'm an incorrigible optimist, and I believe that eventually Dharma Yuddha will be won. Even Harry Potter had to lose a lot before winning. Frodo Baggins had a lot to lose before winning. So it leads a lot of organizations. And Nikund, you said something very nice. You don't win until you lose. That's the time. You got to lose a few times before you win. And Michael Jordan lost for 9 continuous years before he became the champion. Let's learn the lesson from sports. Let's learn the lessons from our life. You are where you are because what you did. Nothing comes to you free on your plate. So I thank all of you. This dialogue must continue because it is, as I had said earlier on, that in America, we are facing an existential threat. We did a program 3 years ago that are Hindus facing an existential threat, are Indians facing an existential threat. And I use the Indian and Hindu thing coterminously because it's part of the same milieu. As somebody said, 80% of the population did not fight for the Kashmiri Hindus' plight. So it is not about anything, it's about country, it's about Bharat, it's about India, and everybody who lives in the country. We are all threatened. People are using their own resources to crush us. Pity that many Indians are part of it. The battle would have been easier if those woke or misguided or selfish Indians had actually understood our story the way it needs to be protected and defended. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, viewers. Please join us. Please join and support, share our channel. And as I always say, Satyameva Jayate, truth will prevail. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
Nice.